Welcome back, everyone. In May of this year, Bill 6, the Safer Municipalities Act, was passed in Ontario. New law prohibits the consumption of illegal substances in public places subject to certain exemptions.
But the legislation has received backlash from a lot of people, including the Encampment Justice Coalition, who are calling this, quote, the punishment of homeless people. So here to break down the impact of Bill 6 and offer insight into legislation affecting unhoused individuals right across this country is outreach worker Lorraine Lam. Welcome back to the show.
Good to have you. Lorraine, welcome back. Let's break down this bill a little bit. So if a person is believed to be consuming substances in a public place, what are the possibilities of what can happen to them?
Yeah, so the person's going to be asked to stop and or leave the premises. And if the person doesn't, then they're going to either face a fine up to $10,000 and or jail time up to 6 months.
Wow. Wow, that's a lot. All right, so Lorraine, you say this doesn't criminalize drug use, it criminalizes poverty. Explain that.
Yeah, so, the bill is framed as, okay, we're gonna try to curb public drug use, which sounds really great, but I think we need to ask some deeper questions, right? Who are people likely to be using in public? Why wouldn't they just use at home? So this is actually a conversation about homelessness. Most people who are using in public do not have a safe place to go at home, and that's why they are out in public. And so ironically, this bill is called the, quote, Safer Municipalities Act, but it doesn't make anybody safer. This bill gives powers to police to also clear encampments. People are in encampments because there's no housing. And people are now afraid of being arrested for using in public because they have nowhere to go. And so now they're going to be using in hidden alleyways, using alone, which is really dangerous. Nothing about this is actually safer.
It's interesting when you frame it that way. So when you say that people have nowhere to go, you are referring to the closing also of supervised consumption sites right across this country. Can you talk to us? This is in the news everywhere. So what is the significance of these closures?
Yeah, so I'd just like to offer for this conversation that people have differing opinions about drug use. You might agree with it, disagree with it, but whatever you believe about it, people are using substances, and supervised consumption sites were set up as spaces where people can go to use their substances. And I have to be really clear, these sites are not offering free drugs. That's not what's happening. That's like saying hospitals are handing out morphine freely. That's not what's happening. So people are accessing these supervised consumption sites and using under supervision where overdoses are reversed. There have been no deaths in supervised consumption sites. It also means that EMS calls can be rerouted to other things. People at these sites are accessing healthcare, informal counseling, pregnancy care, wraparound support. So these are life-saving services. Closing these supervised consumption sites doesn't mean people stop using drugs in the same way that when bars close, people don't stop drinking, right? And so closing these lifelines actually is like in a wildfire saying that we're not going to send out firefighters and we're going to close down fire stations. It's just absurd.
So it's just like eye-opening and to think about it from a different perspective. But let's address the incarceration piece of the bill. Some have argued that 6 months isn't that long, to put someone away for if you've committed especially a serious offense. What do you say to that?
People who say that probably have never done jail time. We could hardly handle a 6-day lockdown during COVID, right? So 6 months incarceration. When you're incarcerated, you're not working, so you lose your job. And then what are you going to do? Try to find another job? That's really hard to explain the gap in your resume. You're not paying rent. Most people lose housing. John Howard had a study that showed that 1 in 5 people are released from jail into homelessness. 65% of incarcerated women are single mothers. Not seeing your kids for 6 months, you might lose custody. What is this doing to the family structure? The Ombudsman in Ontario recently also reported a record number of violations around human rights in the jails. So people are leaving jails in worse shape. So what is the plan here after we jail people?
Right, so if you're leaving it worse, then you can end up being, again,
making the situation worse.
Exactly, there is no plan. And also, fiscally speaking, we're spending $150,000 a year per person to incarcerate them. We could spend that on rent, food, housing.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, clap for that. All right, so Lorraine, there's another piece of this bill that correlates to the Alberta government's recent proposed amendments to the Mental Health Act. Talk to us about that as well.
Yeah, so ironically, the amendment is called compassionate intervention, and this is not a compassionate approach. So the Canadian Public Health Association has indicated that actually involuntary treatment, so this is what the Act is about. It's to say that people can be forced into accessing treatment. And we have studies and data that shows that involuntary treatment actually causes more risk. There's no proven long-term outcomes in terms of healthcare. It deters people from accessing long-term healthcare. The risk of overdose after involuntary treatment is very high, so it's actually very dangerous. And so when we talk about treatment, my proposal is actually the treatment that people need is actually treatment from the harm that these policies have created for communities. We need treatment from the neglect and the detrimental harm and destruction of social infrastructure. Imagine if treatment was about housing, again, having food, having living wages.
Yep. MPP Stephen Blais said that Bill 6, which we started talking about at the top of the segment, is, quote, a step in restoring safety in our communities, but if it's not paired with compassion, it's only a half measure. Is compassion and Bill 6 compatible? Is that possible?
My response to that is, when we talk about safety, safety for who? Because it's pretty unsafe to be homeless. In Toronto, the median age of death for a homeless woman is 36. That's pretty unsafe. It's pretty unsafe to have to use substances unsupervised. It's pretty unsafe to risk arrest when you are living outside because you have no housing. And so when we talk about safety, whose safety are we talking about? And I recognize that there are people who see public drug use and feel uncomfortable or just afraid or maybe even disgusted, but that doesn't mean that you are unsafe. Right? And so my hope for this conversation is compassion is about seeing the struggle someone is in and then trying to alleviate that. This bill doesn't do that. It punishes people for systemic realities that we have left people in.
One thing is clear, that Canada is facing an unprecedented homeless crisis. So what's your recommendation for people watching out there who want to help, but they actually don't even know where to start?
Yeah, it's a big question, right? I think that a lot of people's entryway is often around donating. We can't donate our way out of a housing crisis, but it is a start. A lot of these are really about policies. And I think about a lot of politicians who like to stand at food banks and smile and ask you to donate canned food during Thanksgiving, but yet they are just not actually implementing living wages, right? So we need to pair our donations with some kind of action in terms of writing to our local MPPs. And I would also say we are often afraid of what we don't know. So instead of talking about these things as just issues, let's actually humanize this, because people who are affected by this are brothers and sisters and moms and kin. And so do we know our unhoused neighbors? Do we know people who use substances in our life? Let's try to move away from our space of discomfort and fear and actually try to humanize people. And I think that's a really important step to take.
Terrific job. Thank you so much for your insights today. Really important. And don't go anywhere because we're going to be right back.
Hey, you, come a bit closer. We've got so many more must-see interviews, spicy debates, lifestyle tips, and pop culture moments. So subscribe to our channel by tapping the logo below and don't miss out.